So y'all's president, along with his Republican maggots, literally are telling the American taxpayers that you don't get no food until the Democrats let us take away your health care. But the conversation is not about that. The conversation is about poor people. You know, we are not a culmination. We are a continuation of the work that those who came before us started. It is never over. There's always work to be done. So even if you quit, I ask you not to give up. Let it be your mission to leave something in this world better than how you found it. And y'all, some of us are worried about the wrong things. Okay? I know. I know. That's no way to start a show. So I'll start over and I'll be right back. Well, hello, and welcome to In Your Ear Radio. I am your host, Latoya. Always so very happy to be with you on this beautiful Saturday. The weather is lovely. Y'all, I'm out here in Colorado. That's in my Jay-Z voice, y'all. Okay, out here in Colorado, turning up for my brother's 40th birthday. Hooty hoo! Yes, okay, that is what's up. The weather, it's a little chilly. When I got off the plane, it was smoke coming out my mouth. You know what I'm saying? And I don't even smoke. You know what I'm saying? So the temperature dropped a few degrees compared to Vegas, where I think it's probably in the 80s right now. We got here and it was probably in somewhere in the 50s. I don't know. I can't remember what the temperature was, but it wasn't what they said it was going to be. But nonetheless, it's been nice. We've been out here. We came out here and surprised him, and we're having a great time. So you guys can see I'm in a different background. I'm in my sister's office. So my setup is a little different today, but I wanted to make sure I pulled up for y'all because your presence is my present, and I want to be a present to you and be present. So thank you all who are joining me live on Facebook and YouTube. I know how it is. Y'all could be out here in these streets on a beautiful afternoon. So here's an hour ahead. So if I get a little mixed up, it's 3 o'clock here, it's 2 o'clock in Vegas. And, of course, on the East Coast, it's 5 o'clock, a little after 5 right now. So I'm going to get my little time mixed up, but I'm here. I'm excited. I'm very happy to be with you all. And again, thank you for joining me. Y'all get ready to be live in the chat. So I want to catch up. Let me just give my brother Marmac a birthday, what up? Birthday cheers. So grateful that we could all be here as a family to celebrate him. And I'm so glad he was surprised. And shout out to all the Scorpios, too. I rocks with a Scorpio. You know what I'm saying? I didn't talk bad about some Virgos, and I love Virgos, but I'm just saying I rocks with them Scorpios. You know what I'm talking about? So I wanted to recap. We did an after dark last week, right? We did an after dark with my day one crew, and we talk about some things that matter, some things that don't. So we got on the subject of many things, but one of the things that we talked about was something that I brought up, and I labeled it in the later of a semantic. Shout out to Marmac. Yes, cheers, baby, cheers. It's up from here. Look, the party don't stop, can't stop, won't stop, okay? I see you, GB, in the chat, too. Thank you so much for joining me. And Genuinely Poised, thank you so much for joining me as well on YouTube. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But so we talked last week. We talked about zodiac signs and how people, judge people based on what time of the year they were born. And one of the things I brought up, which is something I always bring up occasionally, and I never really hardly ever get a straight answer from anybody. It's usually me against the world on this topic. And I basically, I opened up with my rant as I normally do. But I was saying basically, like, if we can go to the beach, in a public environment and be in a two-piece or in our bikinis for the world to see, what makes it taboo to be in the privacy of your home amongst your peers, maybe your man's friends, you know what I'm saying, whoever it may be? What makes it so bad to be in a two-piece in your home? And of course, I got a lot of pushback, and I get it. So a lot of it was, and shout out to TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. y'all bougie or something. Y'all stiff or snot. I don't know what it is. I mean, I love y'all, but y'all don't comment a lot. These strangers and some people that I know on TikTok, they will engage. And I see why people were saying, get TikTok, get TikTok. I ain't want to get TikTok because next thing you know, I'm gonna be doing one of them dances. I'm gonna be doing what's Denise Williams. I'm gonna be singing with a broom, and my son gonna be in the background because I'm gonna remind him that I gave birth to him. He needs to dance for me because I'm his mama. That's why I didn't want TikTok. But TikTok is lit. And so most of my engagement came from TikTok, people giving their 2 cents, which was what I appreciate. I'm an intellectual and I like to engage people. So I look forward to having conversations with people and hearing different opinions. It gives me an opportunity to possibly have a debate. It gives me an opportunity to possibly, see things differently. And so I don't want to just have a one-sided conversation where I'm just talking. Definitely here to share what I've learned and what I know and what I believe, but I want to hear from you. So TikTok, they was with it. And so, the consensus was basically, the beach is, that's where you go, you get in the water. Ain't no water at your house. It was stuff like that. When I'm like, yeah, you don't got a bathtub, but it was basically like there's a time and a place for things, right? And so most people were just pushing back to saying, like, is that what you want to do? You want to be in a two-piece in front of your man in your home? And that's an intimate setting. And, it was a lot of people just basically definitely against being half dressed in front of guests in the privacy of your home and having a clear understanding of why it's okay to be half dressed in public amongst strangers and your peers, family, and relatives. But the point I was making, I did mention semantics, but maybe I should have gave it another term. And that term should have been conformity, because basically that's what it is. And that's what I was really focused on. It wasn't so much that I think it's okay to be naked at home in front of your friends and family, and if it's okay to be out in public. That wasn't the issue, because I'm really conservative. I don't really, even with the swimsuit on, I'm gonna have a cover up on. I really don't feel comfortable just being all out like that. And I'm not judging those who do, because I applaud those who are very comfortable with their body and don't mind. And maybe they don't even sexualize themselves in that way to even think about, wearing a two-piece in public. But since I was a child, I've been like that. I've been very conservative when it comes to exposure. But anyway, so the conversation wasn't really so much about the attire so much as it is about conformity, right? Who sets the standards, you know what I'm saying, as to what's appropriate? Because make it make sense. Because you turn your nose up at someone who's walking around half dressed in a private, intimate setting amongst, your peers in your home. But most of you agree that it's okay to do it in public because you're swimming and you're doing things of that nature. But in my mind, it's like, really though, like, what's the difference? I mean, aside from the fact that as a society, we conform to these standards and we all agree as a majority that this is the way it should be. And, other things got thrown into the conversation. Some people said it's just the same thing with pajamas too. What's the standard for pajamas? I don't like to see people in their house shoes out in public or in bonnets, but there are some people who wear beautiful headscarves and wrap their hair. And there's nice, silk satin outfits you can wear that resemble pajamas, throw on some heels, and you can go out in public and people will be cool with that. But if you wear something that is actually pajama attire and come out in your house shoes, people will be calling you ghetto. So I'm just saying how we, you know, as a society, judge people based on the standard, but the standard changes. So, it was more about conformity and maybe culture when I was having that conversation. But I just want to thank everybody on TikTok who engaged me. It was so much fun having that conversation and getting different perspectives. And about a handful of y'all understood what I was really trying to say, which wasn't that, it wasn't about sexualizing or being nude, but it was mainly about society and how we conform to certain things, and we make things okay in one position and not okay in another position for the exact same thing. That's it. Just some food for thought, because I'm an intellectual and I like to get people to think critically and just have a real dialogue about conformity, because that affects us in all things. Because here we are in this world, many of us worried about the wrong things, because there are people out there that know and understand that it is easy to get us to conform. Just tell us this is right and this is wrong, and people just go with it instead of making up their own mind. So that's kind of where I was coming from. So anyway, that's it. I just wanted to touch on that again because it was fun having that conversation. But again, shout out to all the Scorpios. I know y'all just started October 22nd and ends November 21st. And yeah, that's what's up. It's a lot of Scorpios born, famous Scorpios. If you guys don't know, yesterday, Eva Marcel, she turned 41. She couldn't have been 41. Was she 41? Oh yeah, okay. She turned 41. If you guys don't know who she is, I guess she's real popular right now on the show All the Queen's Men. I think that's a Tyler Perry production. I haven't watched it, but I know she's a popular character on there. Also, She was on America's Next Top Model, and that's where I remember her from. If you guys don't remember that show, she was, I don't know if she actually won. I want to say she did. I don't remember. But she was on America's Next Top Model. And then, of course, also she was on The Real Housewives of Atlanta. And I don't think that was a good mix for her. And she realized that it wasn't too, and she moved on with her life. I'm channeling Linda, the little girl. Listen, Linda, she got on with her life. Okay. And also, Willow Smith is 25 as of yesterday, October 31st, Halloween. Okay, girl. Yeah, she posted a funny meme. I won't repeat it because it's kind of vulgar, but it was funny to me, and I know some people probably took it on the wrong way. But if you don't know, Willow Smith is Jada and Will Smith's youngest baby. Okay, but today, Keke Palmer, November 1st, she actually is celebrating her birthday, and she was born in 1993. So I'm looking at this. I'm looking at Keke like, you could be my child. You could be my child. I had a son born in 1992, so that is crazy when you think about it. Like, she could actually be my daughter. She reminds me so much of Whitney Houston. Keke Palmer was, a star, a Disney star who turned just talented. She can sing, she can dance. Her personality is great. I just really like her so much. Again, one of the things that a lot of you may have famously known her for is when Usher had his his residency here. Bomb residency. If you pull up again, I'm pulling up for him too. Him and Nas can get my dollar. That's all I'm saying. .com. You pull up in Vegas, y'all can get my money, a portion of my earnings. Okay. But yeah, so she was at the residency, and you know how Usher does. He pulls up somebody and he serenades him, and makes him feel good. About the time spent, and she was enjoying herself, and then they went viral. Her son's father, I guess they were together at the time, went on to social media, and the word in quote was "You're a mom." So he wasn't happy with how Usher was serenading her. Mind you, Usher's married and he was entertaining. But yeah, she got a lot of attention for that as well. But yeah, so she's also right now trending because she's coming out with, I think she's executively producing a new documentary. What is it called? Southern Fried Rice. If you guys aren't familiar with it, I don't think it's out yet. I'm not sure. But this is supposed to be considered a dramedy. It's fictional. And I want to say it's fictional, but is it fictional? I think it's a true story. It's a documentary. Most documentaries are true stories. Forgive me, y'all, thinking out loud. But anyways, so this is Southern Fried Rice, and it's a dramedy that follows a Korean American student. Her name is Coco Johnson, and she was raised by a Southern Black family, and she's being followed as she navigates her freshman year at a fictional historically Black college and university, HBCUs. No, I don't understand. Maybe it's not a true story. But anyway, that is the highlights of what she's helping to executive produce. And the series has generated significant social media discussion and mixed reviews regarding the focus on non-Black protagonists within a historically Black institution. So, bottom line is some people are saying that it's enough Black people out here. We don't need to, maybe culturally appropriate our life and to an Asian American woman. But I think it's quite interesting because, again, this is a Korean American student who was raised by a Black family. So we get a different perspective. There's one lady, her and her son, and she is funny because she's bakes. And if you guys she's on social media, all of the platforms, but her son really pushes her out that she's a baker. And she is an Asian woman. Look like she's full-blooded. I don't know if she's Korean, but I believe she is. But her dialect, when she talks, she sounds just like a Black woman when she opens her mouth. Her face, you couldn't tell. But at the same time, her voice, the bass in her voice and all of that is Black, but her accent is still Korean. But she is us. She's just like she is when she talks. And I think about that. And I think it's important to highlight people who may be of a different nationality, but have grown up in a different culture. We have the Asian culture, but some Asian people weren't necessarily raised in the Asian culture. And this is an example of that. And I think the more we pay more attention to different ways that people live and expose ourselves to the differences in other people's lives, that we can get a better understanding of each other and respect each other's differences more and see how much we are alike. And so I don't have a problem with it, but somebody always gonna have a problem with something, and that's just what it is. And what can you do about that? So anyway, what are y'all watching out there? Anyway, let me know what you're watching. I recently finished what was it? Married at First Sight, or Love Is Blind. What else did I finish up? The verses, y'all. So while we were doing our live last weekend, I had no idea that the verses was live in Las Vegas, and that included Birdman, Cash Money, and No Limit. And so they were doing the verses. Mind you, I thought verses had been killed because I remember verses. It came out of the pandemic. It was Swiss Beats and Timberland, and it was just genius, right? We got our favorite entertainers going against each other. So like somebody, it would be like a Monica and Brandy, or it was just so many different people doing their thing, and it was just so great to have it. And then it just got so big that some other culture decided they wanted to buy it, and then it went away. And so I was like, this is the problem. We always do something great and then we sell it. And I can't be mad at a person. I can't tell a man how to make this money. But in my heart, I was just thinking in the same level as when you think about Deion Sanders going from an HBCU to Colorado. You know what I'm saying? Where the HBCU that he left was blowing up because people were just proud that they had a NFL star that was a head coach. And it really brought a lot of money and a lot of recognition to the HBCUs. And then him to just jump ship. That's his business, right? Nobody can tell him how to live his life. But I was feeling the same way when it came to versus when those who started it decided to sell it. So I don't know if they bought it back because they were present based on some of the footage I saw. But again, while we were hosting In Your Ear Radio After Dark, there was a versus going on. Did anybody catch it? Did anybody catch Cash Money and No Limit? Did you enjoy it? I'm West Coast, but I get down with some of the South, and I definitely have a lot of respect for Master P, just the way he does business. I remember, when he got Snoop out of his deal with Death Row Records, and then Snoop decided it wasn't a good fit, and he didn't hold him to that contract. He respected him as a man, treated him as a man, and let him step out without saying, "No, son, you signed up for this million year contract." He let him out. And I just love the character about a person like that, and we need more of that in this industry. You know what I'm saying? Instead of people just always thinking business minded. Be a stand-up person and have some integrity. That's important too. So anyway, I didn't catch the verses. They said Lil Wayne wasn't present. They said he was sick. He was, back and forth at the hospital, according to one of the reports. So that was surprising that he wasn't there. But a lot of other people were. And it sounded like they were just over the moon having a really good time. So that was dope. Mia X, if you guys are familiar. And Young Bleed, he performed. And then shortly thereafter, if you guys don't know, rapper Young Bleed went into a coma. I think it was induced because of a brain or aneurysm. So he had bleeding on the brain, and he, from what I've heard last, he's still in critical condition, and his family is trying to raise money to cover his medical expenses. It wouldn't be that if we just had universal health care. If our country took care of us, if our country used some of the billions of tax dollars that we contribute into this economy to take care of its own. You know what I'm saying? But that's not the world that we live in, and it's unfortunate. And that's what it is. And so what can you say? So it is what it is. That's an interesting story I was reading. I think this is something that Oprah had brought up, and I'm just going to touch on it shortly because they're calling this, there's a new term, it's called gray divorce. Are you guys familiar with this now? They're saying that more and more people over 50 are getting divorced. A lot of people romanticize the 60s and the 50s and just anything before the 70s and 80s where they said more families stayed together without knowing the history of why. Yes, people loved each other, so maybe that's why a lot of people stayed together. But historically, if you go do the knowledge, when you think about the fact that women weren't able to even get credit on their own or divorce, or it was legal to have spousal abuse and rape, there were a lot of things that contributed to people staying in not so good marriages. So, when we romanticize divorce, I think it's important that we go back and do the history and understand the stories behind why a lot of people did stay together during those times compared to now. But it is surprising that, as you get older, you're more wise, I would like to think, for the most part. And, you pretty much know what you want and what you need. So if you're getting divorced at this age, it's kind of, and I just, I could kind of get it. In some respect, it's like you come to the realization that this ain't the life you want to live. Or maybe you're getting married close into your 50s and now you're still divorcing before 65. Like you haven't learned enough yet. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting just reading about this because, the divorce rates for this age group, 50 and older, has doubled between 1990 and 2010. So in 2019, about 36% of all divorces involved individuals who were 50 and older. For adults 65 and older, divorce rates had tripled since 1990. increasing from 5% to 15% in 2022. Why is that, do y'all think? Let me know what you think that is contributed to, because, we have far since surpassed, women not having the same rights as men as far as when it comes to being able to buy your own home and have a credit card and just be able to do certain things that men were able to do without having a wife. Women needed to have a spouse in order to do those. So I'm just interesting. So they're posting and commenting that the reason for the increase, and they said the trend is that baby boomers, the likely or high, they're having a higher likelihood of divorce because of their life expectancy. So they're living longer. So I guess they like, life is too short. We got to get it all in. And so, okay, they're living longer, and their willingness not to be in unfulfilling marriages. So overall, that's why people are divorcing. And Viagra's out here. You know what I'm saying? After 50, women are in menopause. At some point after 50, they can't get pregnant. Now you can wild out. You know what I'm saying? You're going back to your I'm just making up stuff, but I'm kind of thinking that has a lot to do with it too. Just having that total independence, not having to worry about getting pregnant, and then having Viagra. You can go wild out. If your spouse ain't trying to give it up. Anyway, shout out to all of you guys who work through it, stick with it, and create healthy marriages, and I hope that they last a lifetime. But they say other factors in great divorces, again, is which they're calling for people over 50, is that they also remarriages are high in divorce. So they get married again. They're not scared to get married again, but the divorce rate is high for people over 50 who get remarried. So it's interesting, right? It's pretty interesting. So again, thank you all for joining me. I forgot to share my video. So let me do that now to my group so that they can watch too live if they would like. And then we can get back into this conversation. So again, you guys, I am not at my regular location. So you can see I have a different background, a different look. Which I like my t-shirt though. Yeah, baby, that's in your ear radio. Okay, let me go ahead and share this to my group. And that is done. Okay, back to you. So also, if you guys did not know, today is November 1st, 2025. And this is also the day that there was colonial taxes implemented. So a lot of people, talk about taxes, and I want to get into this a little bit more. You hear the conversations about taxing isn't legal, and we shouldn't necessarily have to pay taxes, and all of this conversation. But taxes came about back in 1765 actually is when the stamp tax came into effect. And this was a thing. This was before even the United States was a colony. So they was over here causing havoc, kicking the Native Americans out of their homes and imposing disease on them, and just running rapid and doing it wrong. But it wasn't a colony. It wasn't the United States of America yet. But in 1765 they were beefing with the British. The British was also their ally. It was kind of weird, but it was both of those things were happening simultaneously. It was beef, and it was some type of allyism, I would call it. I'm just trying to get the sun off me. So anyway, so it was called a colonial tax, and more popular known as the stamp tax. So again, they put this to effect. The stamp tax it included property taxes, poll taxes, imports of duties, even legal forms was taxed, tariffs. So import duties that would be considered tariffs, and they had taxes on specific goods. Even refined sugar was taxed. And so this all came about under the British Parliament, again, who was still working with those who came over to the United States to colonize the United States. They were working with the British Parliament, and the British Parliament attempted to impose these direct taxes, again, such as the stamp tax, November 1st in 1765, and the Townshend Act of 1767, which was also put into effect to raise money. Guess what these taxes were raised? What was the point of them raising money? So it was even though there was widespread opposition, so those who were a part of these colonies was not with it. The white men, I would just say, because we know that women didn't have any rights, and of course the enslaved couldn't speak up. But these white men who could have a say so were not very appreciative of having this tax. They opposed the stamp tax, and they said it was designed to raise revenue for the British. Guess what it was for? For operations in America. And guess what that was for? It was for defense of the American colonies in the French and Indian War that went into effect from 1754 to 1763. So this was under the Pontiac's Rebellion of 1763, again in 64, where costly affairs for the Great Britain and Prime Minister George Grenville at the time hoped to recover some of these costs by taxing the colonists in 1764. And so it went on and on and on. So taxes started then. And again, the taxing went into effect because the British needed money to fund a war. Okay. And so when we just fast forward into what's happening right now here in the United States of America, when we think about the majority of our tax dollars and where it's being spent, go Google it. The majority of our tax dollars is spent on war, ironically. So all of this taxing went into effect to support war. And we know and understand that these wars don't always necessarily benefit us, right? These wars are put into effect for the interest of those who have the power, and being under their regime. What can you do? What can you do? And so it's just interesting, when I think about that, this being the anniversary of taxes being implemented in the United States, even before it was a colony, and considering where we're at now, where you have a leadership trying to take away, redistribute tax dollars that should be used to subsidize incomes of people who can't afford, who are not making a livable wage, who can't afford food, who can't afford childcare, who can't afford seniors, who can't afford Medicaid or Medicare, Wheels on Meals, and just all the programs that are put into effect by our tax dollars. They're taking those things away. So back then, these people, these colonizers, these people, powers that be, were saying, hey, we're getting taxation without representation, because basically you're taxing us for a war. You're not taxing us. Our money, we don't even get a say so on what our money is being spent on. You just basically are charging us so that you can have enough money to have a war. And that's exactly what happened. And, we know back in 1913 is when we started, when it was, we had a country that was established as the United States of America. I mean, 1913, under the 16th Amendment, taxes went full blown. So under this ratification, Congress granted the authority to levy income tax without basing it on population or apportioning it among states. So they were basically just taking people's money and doing what they want to do with it. And under these stipulations, where the Supreme Court, passed this. This was the case under Pollard versus Farmer. You can go look into that, Loans and Trust Company. But taxation without a part of this taxing was that you could have taxation without apportionment, which meant, again, as I stated, the amendment allowed for non-apportioned direct income tax, which was previously required for direct taxes, meaning they could take our money and spend it how they want, which is basically what they do. We talk about this. I'm going to talk more, and we're going to get more into it. But they basically take our money and spend it how they want. And one of the things they've done is try to take away subsidies and, make it so that the money goes to what they want to spend it on. Corporations bailing big companies out, giving corporations welfare, and wagging their finger at the people who put the most into it as a whole, to maintain, the riches of this country. Take away anything that benefits the working man and woman, the working poor, those who pay into it, and that's exactly what's happening. And it gives Congress power. Congress can tax income, and it says for whatever source derived. So there's no specification. So when we're saying, we have taxation without representation, we see that for people who are convicted felonies, who in some states cannot vote. We see that for people who are here, who are not U.S. citizens, who cannot vote. We see that for people who, for whatever reason, have been omitted from voting. We see that with the Voting Rights Act being taken away from us, where they're doing everything they can to omit us having a say in what goes on, while they just keep taking our money and doing what they want under the 16th Amendment. That's something I think you guys should look into and think more about that, because I do hear a lot of people say, taxing is illegal. Oh, no, it's part of our Constitution. It's one of the amendments. It's under the 16th Amendment. They wrote it how they wanted it to be, and it's up to us to go back in and fight and make changes, by way of, lobbyists or whomever is in that position, legislation, to change those things, because amendments don't affect, you can go in and make amendments, that's not a big deal. And so those are the kind of things I think we should think about, because right now we know everybody was on pins and needles, right? We were on pins and needles because we did not know if those who relied on subsidies such as SNAP, which is income provided to supplement whatever food you're not able to provide for your family. Is based on, your wages in different states. The amounts vary. But in this case, this y'all's president was willing to take away subsidies for the working man, and for the working woman, and for children, and for seniors, people who weren't working, people who are disabled, was willing to take money away from those people, and allocate it elsewhere, probably for war, probably for his ballroom or whatever he wanted to spend it on. But it was middle fingers up to the taxpayers who were that needed it the most, right? And so basically, I mean, God bless these judges. I mean, damn, they're playing a game with us, right? So the judges came in and said, "Nah, son, you can't just leave people hungry," because that's exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to do that, and I kind of felt like either somebody was going to save the day. I was fearful that the Democrats would fold, and open up the House. Remember, if they agree to what the Republicans want, people's healthcare premiums are going up 3 times. The cost of medicine and everything that we spend is going up by 3 times. So people who are paying already $600 a month for healthcare out of their pockets, they're going to be paying $1,800. Okay, and they're already getting letters saying that they're this is the time. This is open enrollment. By the end of the year, most of the time it's by the end of October for a lot of corporations. But this is what we were up against. And so the Democrats said, no, we're not going to do this to our people. The Affordable Care Act, shout out to the Obama administration, put this into effect for all of America to be able to have access to health care and preventative health care. Now we don't have to, thank goodness to the Affordable Care Act, which is the same as Obamacare. It's just, that's our slang. Obamacare is our slang term for the ACA, which is Affordable Care Act. Okay. But basically, under the Affordable Care Act, now, you remember you couldn't even get certain life insurance benefits or health care if you had pre-existing conditions. So if you came into the world with type 1 diabetes, which is you cannot prevent it and it's not curable in comparison to type 2, which is basically brought about by your, lifestyle or your eating habits or whatnot, which can be reversed. Type 1 diabetes is what you're born into this. So that's a pre-existing condition. Getting cancer, a pre-existing condition. You cannot get, insurance companies could deny you. So you would have to pay out of pocket thousands upon thousands. In some cases, it adds up to millions, depending on what type of care you need in order to survive, to be alive, okay? Not to die. That's what it comes down to. In layman's term, in order not to die, you needed to have a certain amount of money. So this Affordable Care Act was for the people. Is it perfect? Of course it's not perfect, but we're not in a perfect world when we have two different sides who have different opinions about what this should be. So you have the Republicans who claim they want small government. Okay, they claim they don't want subsidies. They do not want a socialist society. Let me just remind y'all, socialism is already baked into our culture. Okay, when you call the police, you don't get a bill. That means your tax dollars went into that police officer pulling up to your house. Okay, when you having access to water to your home, you do not pay for the plumbing and all of the things that happen behind the scenes from in Las Vegas, the Hoover Dam, for example, to make that water be accessible to your property. Yeah, you have to pay a little something. There's so many programs that are in effect that public education, that's a form of socialism. But you have one side, which is a Republican. If we own the same bird, as people want to say, it's two wings of the same bird. It's not. They may have similar interests, but they're not the same. If they were the same, they wouldn't be called Republican and Democrat. It would just be one party. Okay, they would not be different. They have different interests. Again, the Republican Party claims they want small government, but they pulling up with the National Guard. They're pulling up with the National Guard into urban communities. They say they want small government, but they pulling up into hospitals and ERs, telling women that they cannot, that they need to monitor their reproductive health care. Make it make sense. Okay, make it make sense. And then again, thank goodness that the courts jumped in, which is what I knew would probably happen. A lot of people were concerned that it was just going to be havoc because you don't have food to eat. I know a lot of people who get subsidies, even with what they get from SNAP, it doesn't last throughout the year. So, I mean, not the year, but the month. So, every 30 days, I would say every month you're getting subsidies, but some people that the money that they're getting doesn't even carry them through a whole month. So some people are already hungry, waiting for that extra subsidies to be able to go buy groceries and feed their family. And so they didn't know how they were going to get that. And when I say we worried about the wrong things, during this whole time, the bulk of the conversations that I was hearing via social media, talking amongst peers and just people, the buzz was people need to get jobs. They need to stop having so many kids. Some people just abusing the system and things of that nature. And I'm like, does anybody do the stat? Just because you have two neighbors or you have a family that's under a generation of welfare and things of that nature, that does not represent the entire country. And let me tell you, there are some people who are working 2 and 3 jobs who still need SNAP to supplement their income. So when you're talking about people need to just go to work, people are working. Did y'all know there are people who are in the military who go out and fight for us, who are not, who also get SNAP? They also get subsidies. So you telling me that these people risk their lives to save other people's lives and fight for the interests of the American government, and they still have to go get in the welfare line to get subsidies to supplement their food? Okay. Make it make sense. And this is why I say some people are just focused on the wrong things. What we need to be focused on is corporations who get subsidies all the time. Y'all, we have a president right now who is living in public housing. Okay. He is getting $400,000 annually, not on top of all the other things that he's allotted, 50,000 here, 100,000 there, security and just other expenses. His wife is also getting security protection from our tax dollars. Again, they are living in public housing. This woman, his wife, does not have to pay rent. And we are focused on a poor man or a woman who might be taking advantage of the system, who isn't working or may have an underground job, because if she goes out and work, she won't get these, subsidies. And she's just trying to make it work, or he's just trying to make it work. You know what I'm saying? Our tax dollars, and they have paid into this too. You go buy a pack of bubble gum, you're paying taxes. You're paying into this system. Again, we have a president who is living in public housing. His wife does not get a salary. He gets $33,000 a month allocated to him. Did his income stop when they shut down the government? Did he stop getting his $33,000 a month for his $400,000 a year salary that is paid by taxpayers? I'm just saying, make it make sense. That's all. We be focused on the wrong things. We need to be focused on these rich people who are taking full advantage of the poor people. They need the working man and the working woman, of average person that isn't wealthy or rich, to pay into the system, not just by way of taxes, but by buying goods and services. Because if we are not contributing to their goods and services, they have no business. Amazon cannot make money unless we give them money. Okay. Walmart cannot make money unless we give them money. Okay. I'm just saying. So a lot of people are just focused on the wrong things. And it's so unfortunate because it's the playbook. It's right out of the Southern strategy playbook on how to keep people distracted while we take everything from them. We pull the rug from up under them, which is exactly what is happening. And people are noticing because they rather talk about what they see in their little the little world that they live in. And it's amazing. It amazes me that our minds are just so zoomed in to things that really, really don't matter. And the things that really, really do matter, we're not even thinking about. We're not in the streets raging about the fact that y'all's president is getting $33,000 a month. His income didn't stop. The Congress and Senate are still getting their checks while other people are going to work. I know people. I have friends and family who are furloughed. I have friends and family who are going to work every day and they're not getting a check. And I know people who were concerned about the fact that they might not get even the other supplements that they're getting. Remember, rent has gone up. Cost of living increases do not, there's no law that requires that corporations give cost of living increases. The only people who are getting cost of living increases, which is state and federal employees, we could consider those real jobs, right? Because they give you you get health care. When the cost of living goes up every year, they do the calculations to determine if you too should be paid more to be able to sustain your way of life. Okay. That's not every job you go into. It's not mandated. It's not by law. So that's another thing to focus on. People aren't able to make ends meet with 2 and 3 jobs. And if you out working 2 and 3 jobs, who's watching your kids? Daycare, people are paying an average of 600 a week for daycare when they're not even taking their kids to daycare every day. But in order to maintain that slot, they still have to pay full price. Under a Harris administration, that was one of the proposals to reduce the cost of, to subsidize daycare for people whose income didn't make it. That was one of the reasons why I wasn't interested in having more kids, because I felt like I would just be going to work just to pay for daycare, and make that make sense. Make that make sense. Meanwhile, you got people capitalizing off of this. I mean, in real life, not on TV. Did y'all hear this? Let me sip some tea. Let me sip. I got this cute mug too, y'all. Oh, you can't see it. It's blurred. Okay, never mind. So you have some people who are capitalizing off of this. Shout out to all of the people who, were proactive and decided to get ahead of what is happening. I'm trying to get the sun away from me. Excuse me, you guys. Try to get ahead of what's happening, and you have a lot of nonprofits, churches, some of the churches, some of the agencies, food banks and things of that nature, who are trying to get prepared, who are already getting wiped out, because even people who may have what they need right now are going to be proactive and start stocking up, because we don't know what's going to happen in this under this new regime. We can't trust. We can't trust what's going to happen next. So shout out to those who are in the trenches and trying to make sure that people don't go hungry and not are dependent on these people playing games with our lives. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Jamal Bryant, who spoke before his congregation. People give tithes and they contribute to the institution of the church. He said, instead of paying your tithes, instead of giving money to the church, give that money to someone in need, to a federal worker who is furloughed, to a federal worker who is working and not getting paid. And that's how you're supposed to do it. I know I talked last week on After Dark. We talked about one of the Lions, who's a pastor at a church, who was collecting money for the building fund for something that's been going on for years. And he was trying to get $1,000 plus $1,000, $2,000, and he had people lining up. And you guys remember the story. If you don't, just a little background. A lady got in the wrong line, apparently, and came with $1,243, something like that. And he just reprimanded her, just checked her like, that's not what I told you to do. He was talking to her like a pimp. You know what I'm saying? I'm surprised he didn't come out with the baby powder and she didn't leave away with a hand mark. You know how the pimps do with the baby powder. I was waiting for that. You know what I'm saying? But that didn't happen. But what did happen is Tyler Perry ended up donating $100,000 to the Lions Church to go ahead and get that West Wing built. Okay. Yeah, him and Trump, they got something in common, I guess. They want to build on top of stuff. You got a president who's spending millions. I want to say it's 90 million. I'll get the correct number for you, to build a ballroom on the White House. That's why Obama should have painted it black. We're going to do ignorant shit like this. Obama should have painted the White House black when he had the opportunity to, damn it. But you got a man who's spending millions, and people are donating. This is what they're telling us, that these are private donors. I don't even know how this is allowed. Even when Barack was in office, people say, oh, he made changes. He didn't add a new wing. All he did was take a tennis court and convert it to a basketball court. But this man has donors, corporations giving money to build a ballroom. Okay. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I hope that they take a bulldozer to that spot once it's built and he is out of office, and tear it completely down. And I will petition for that to be done. But anyway, so shout out to Jamal Bryant, who's on the right page. Winans, not so much. And Tyler Perry, I guess, looking out for the Winans to close down that. So that's a lot. That's a lot, you guys. We definitely out here focused on the wrong things. We definitely not understanding that we are being hoodwinked, bamboozled, led amok. It's better if I just use. I'm not having trouble scrolling, but it's better if I just use what I have here already. That the late great Mr. Malcolm X said to us. And that was, I'm looking for the thing in here that he said, which I can't find. You've been hoodwinked, ran amok, led astray. Okay, I'm paraphrasing. I don't know if that's the exact quote. But we think about the SNAP and how, you talk about these Republicans and they're talking about small government. This wasn't even a dent in the spending. The majority of our tax dollars are spent, billions of dollars are spent in war and military. This is what our money is being spent on. So when it comes to these benefits, when it comes to the subsidies that are helping poor people, the working poor, people who just cannot afford to survive without these things, um, yeah, it does not. I'm just, I just, you literally have Republicans saying, we will not give you food, we will not give you income until the Democrats agreed to take away your health care. Because technically that's what they're doing. Because if you can't afford, just like anything else, if you can't afford car insurance, if you can't afford health insurance, you're not going to pay into that. And a lot of people will say, I'm not paying into it because, it's, I need to be able to feed my family and I can't afford to feed my family. So we're just not going to have health care and we'll just show up when we're sick, which then you put in a position where you're not getting preventative protections, going in and getting physicals every year to make sure your blood and everything is straight. You don't have diabetes or whatever other conditions you may have. You just show up when you are already in stage 4 cancer because you're not getting the what you need. You're not going to the dentist every 6 months and getting x-rays and making sure your gums are healthy because you can't afford to pay out of pocket. You can't afford the premiums, the cost of it. You got to feed your family. This is what we're living with. And I was going to pull up the stats from George Lopez, but I don't have that. Anyway, one of the other things I wanted to bring up is another thing I was watching, and I don't know if you guys watched it, was, what was it called? Oh my goodness. I hate when I draw a blank, but I have it here in front of me. And it is called The House of Dynamite, right? The House of Dynamite. If you guys aren't familiar with that, it comes to the point where we learn that Idris Elba he's the president of the United States. But basically, the military finds out that there is a nuclear weapon headed to the United States, landing in Chicago. And we know with nuclear weapons, nobody would want to survive it. Shout out to the late John F. Kennedy, who, when his wife asked him, when they were concerned about a nuclear war, about nuclear bombs being dropped, she asked him, Miss Kennedy, the first lady at that time, what would happen if there was a nuclear weapon dropped here in the United States? And he said, you wouldn't want to be alive. You wouldn't want to be alive to experience, what would happen under a nuclear weapon. So this movie again was based on that. So the dilemma was: do we intercept the bomb? Who do we attack? They couldn't determine who was actually the person who sent the bomb. All the people that they know, they contacted those who may have had nuclear weapons and said, "Did you do this?" And they were all saying, "No, no, no." But what pissed me off is how it ended. Okay, so but that's coming next, y'all. We know maybe not in our lifetime, but in some time, I think really soon, it's going to be some nuclear weapons that's going to be dropped. And it's unfortunate. And as we know, if you understand anything about nuclear weapons, people do not survive. And those who do, as JFK said, they would probably wish that they didn't survive. Okay. And so, wow, it's just crazy. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. But yeah, so people are capitalizing off of the poor people. Again, shout out to those who are giving resources and providing ways for people to be able to maintain, at least eat, during these times, with the government being closed down. I see a lot of online where people are posting recipes, things you can make quick, poor people meals. You know how we used to do back in the day. Many of you don't remember, we grew, some of us grew up on rice and beans, maybe not meat all the time. You didn't get that big piece of chicken. Shout out to what's that? Everybody Hates Chris. The daddy always got the big piece of chicken. You didn't get a big piece of chicken. You ate a lot of rice and beans, right? And so when this economy, people are saying buckle up, and they were posting different meals you can make that'll feed the family, big pot of spaghetti and things of that nature. But why is a hamburger helper in it? How did Hamburger Helper get in it? That's all I'm saying. So Hamburger Helper started promoting theirs, saying this is a cheap, easy meal, that you can provide for your family. Okay, I feel you, Hamburger Helper. I can't be mad at you for trying to get in on making some money, but I think that's pretty cold. I would rather them come out and say we're donating food, we're donating Hamburger Helper, than saying come buy Hamburger Helper because it's less expensive. And I mean, if you look at the ingredients that are included in Hamburger Helper, there's a lot of sodium, there's a lot of not so healthy things in it. And unfortunately, if we're not going to have health care and we're not going to be able to, and we're under a lot of stress because of what's happening with the economy and just overall with all these the racism and just everything that's happening, we need some form of good health and good eating. And so, yeah, but yeah, Hamburger Helper pulled up. And they had recommendations, but I'm gonna tell you something. Once I got one of my own, because I did grow up on Hamburger Helper. Okay, I love that cheeseburger macaroni. I love the tuna bake or tuna casserole. I think they called it tuna helper. And there was another one, the stroganoff. But once I, got out on my own, and those are some of the things I enjoy doing. I learned how to make them from scratch. So I didn't go buy a box of Hamburger Helper. I used ground turkey, and I made my stroganoff mixture. And so I have my own recipes with the tuna casserole. I learned how to make that from scratch. So I didn't go buy the box of. And the thing, it's just, people think, when I even think about baking a cake, the ingredients, about as much as you're going to do with that box, with the ingredients, it's pretty much what you're going to do if you just pull out what's already in your fridge: eggs, water, oil, maybe milk in some cases, sugar, flour. You already have those things, but I understand some people like convenience. But yeah, so yeah, Hamburger Helper, they wanted to get involved, and I just think that is so spineless. That is so very spineless. And we are out here worrying about the wrong things, talking about things that really, really don't matter. And the things that do matter are the things that we should be really, really trying to focus on and talk about, and we don't. Um, it's just a lot. You have, while y'all's president didn't want to feed the hungry and literally wanted to withhold subsidies, and the judge wouldn't allow, and we don't even know. So somebody let me know if y'all get y'all SNAP, if money gets loaded on your card, because even with the judges ordering y'all's president to go ahead and allow people to get their subsidies, who's to say that's going to roll out? Because people capitulate to whatever this man says. Whatever he says, they do. That's just what it is. That's just what it is. Okay. And so that's unfortunate, right? Who's to say? Meanwhile, our tax dollars, $40 billion of our tax dollars has gone to Argentina. Okay. While they're cutting SNAP. And we had a $5 billion contingency fund. This is what the judges are saying. Hey, the government shut down. We understand that, people don't, we don't have people in position to be able to cut the checks or whatnot, but we have a surplus. We have 5 billion in USDA contingency funds that we can use to make sure people don't go hungry. And y'all's president gave that to middle finger, and the judges had to step in and say, nah, you can't just starve people, like they doing over in Gaza to those people, based on their religion, based on the fact that they want that land. You know what I'm saying? That's what it comes down to when you do the knowledge on what's happening, even in Gaza. And when you think about what's happening in Sudan and in the Congo, so much happening in the world, you got. There's so much. Why aren't we focusing on these corporations? Why aren't they being forced to give livable wages? Why are we going into restaurants and paying whatever we pay and still having to contribute to the waitress and the waiter's salary by way of taxes, because they're getting minimum wages? Even dealers on, that work in these casinos are getting a minimum wage, and the corporations have made it so we not only pay for the entertainment that we get when we patronize these institutions, corporations, or whatnot, businesses, but we're also paying their salary by way of tipping. Okay, we're paying their salaries by way of tipping. Why aren't we talking about that? Why aren't we talking about that? Y'all, let me sip my tea. I'm working through this sun. It is really getting to me, and I don't know how to get rid of it. I'm really trying to work around it, y'all, so forgive me. But the sun is on me. But let me just say this. I learned that we have corporations that support Trump. We have Walmart. We have corporations like Amazon that support the new regime, right? They contributed to it, to the whole campaign, right? These people, where we spend our money, okay? These are people who consider these corporations are predominantly Republican corporations, right? So again, these people call themselves conservatives, Christians, and they want small government. They don't want the government involved. That's why you have a president who says he wants to take away all of these Democratic-led programs such as Social Security, again, SNAP, Medicaid. He said Democratic-led programs, and these are, he says, are led by Democrats. These are some of the institutions that he's talking about. Meanwhile, again, just to stay on track here, with Walmart and places like Amazon, these very Republican-led small government corporations, when they hire employees, you're filling out all that paperwork. Y'all know how it is with a new job, right? They're giving you all this paperwork. Some of that paperwork includes ways to apply for SNAP. Okay, so you got Republicans saying we need to take away this. People need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and they need to work, and we need to stop giving people supplemental income. They need to get out here and work, and be able to afford it. If they want an education, they need to be able to pay for it. If they want to be healthy, they need to be able to pay for it. If they want to be able to eat, they need to be able to pay for it. Forget how much it costs. Forget regulating pharmaceutical companies. Forget regulating rent, and forget regulating just the cost of living in general. Whatever it is, y'all should be able to afford it. And if you can't, that's your problem. But if you apply for a job at Walmart, part of the hiring process is letting you know, giving you a form to apply for SNAP. You see what I'm saying? So we be focused on the wrong things because we sit up here worried about people who can't afford, but people are going to work. They're going to Walmart. They're getting jobs. They're not getting paid a lot of money. A lot of people get around paying healthcare by giving people part-time hours. So if the 40-hour a week, you have to work at least 40 hours a week to qualify for healthcare, they only work you 38 hours a week. Like literally, this is what people are doing. And that's just a hypothetical scenario. But this is literally what people are doing. So when you apply for Amazon and you're hired, when you go look through that whole work packet, there is information on getting Medicaid, on getting health insurance, subsidies. These are corporations who are Republican-led, and again, Republicans believe in small government. They don't want people to be able to. They don't want to give out, subsidies for people who can't afford the food. They don't want to give out health care. They don't want to have universal health care. But behind the scenes, they are encouraging people that they hire to go and get SNAP, go get food stamps, to go get Medicare, Medicaid. But they publicly are saying, we need everybody to work. I'm just saying, a lot of us are worried about the wrong things, and we're focused on the wrong things, and we're allowing ourselves to be hoodwinked, bamboozled, ran them up, and led astray by people who intentionally are manipulating our perception of what's really happening. You have to be independent. You have to be a critical thinker and go do the knowledge. So I'm just dropping breadcrumbs of things for you to go research, but make it make sense. These very corporations who are contributing to a Trump administration who wants to take away Meals on Wheels. This is something that feeds elderly people who can't go to work. Do you know that they're trying to increase the retirement age? So I think it's between 60 and 65, if I'm not mistaken. And they wanted to go up to 70. And they want 9-year-olds and 7-year-olds to be able to work. And they don't want you to be able to have free education. They don't want you to have access to subsidies, but they're not regulating. Again, I'm just repeating myself on purpose. They're not regulating the cost of living. You're still paying too much money for food. And for people who are focused on what we want to call welfare queens and people who go get their nails done, but they got food stamps or whatever this little world that people are in, this little bubble, the things that they're focused on, you're worried about this. And meanwhile, the government is using our money to fund wars. They're funding the war in Gaza. They're using our money to instigate other wars. I mean, have y'all been paying attention to what's happening? They over here bombing people in non-territorial areas. They're bombing people in boats and ships, claiming and telling us the verbiage is they're terrorists. The verbiage is these are drug terrorists. Okay. So you have people who are literally taking away, doing what the bottom line is they just want to starve people out. They want to bring slavery back. Okay. That's exactly what they're doing. You go to places like Europe, they have universal health care. Do they pay higher taxes? Yes. But anybody can go and get medical care and preventative um, medical care, to the point where if you are a new parent, you can take a year off, not just a woman, but a man. You can take a year off from work and still go back to your job just so you can raise your child or have that mental health time to be off. And they have other mental health incentives that are paid for by way of your health care. Those are people who care about the people. Is it a perfect country? I'm sure it's not. But those are people who care about the well-being of those people, because those are the people who help build, maintain, and sustain that country. But here we have people that don't give a damn about any of us, and we have people who are focused on the little man than these big corporations. And it just amazes me how we allow them to just get away with that. The subsidies for the Affordable Care Act is 35 billion. 90% of citizens will be affected if these subsidies go away. 90% of US citizens will be affected. And people are telling people to pull themselves up by the bootstrap. They need to get a job. They need to work 2 and 3 jobs. This is what people are telling people. So this is all by way of this big, ugly bill. Let me just play this clip of this man who really teed me off, talking about that the Democrats are the reason why the government is shut down, which is not true. It is not factual. It is a bold-faced lie, and it's unfortunate, that even we have a president who's lying to the people. But we used to that. But people believe what he say. They believe this when he says this. But we have a man, and this is a black man talking, just so you guys know. And this is what he said. I don't even know if I'm going to play all of it because it's very aggravating. But he just flipped it on us in regards to what's happening with the Democrats.
You're grounded. Ain't no sun. I'm cold as a motherfucker, right? But it's okay because I'm becoming.
Let me I'm just. Yeah, that wasn't it. He's cold, y'all. I'm warm, but let me get to what I was trying to play. And this is again a black man who wants us to know that he wants us to believe a lie, basically saying that the Democrats are the reason why that the government is shut down. And hopefully I can pull it up. Of course, when I'm looking for something, I cannot find it, but we're going to get to it, okay?
And I'm not telling you who to vote for. I just want you to hear this information, do whatever you want with it, and then form your opinion afterwards. But to everybody saying, this is who y'all voted for, Trump's the reason why all of this is going on with SNAP benefits, government shutdown, this, that, and the third. Democrats are actually the reason why the government is being shut down. Is shut down. They're the ones who has voted no 10 plus times to get the government open back up. SNAP benefits, they voted no. Paying essential workers, they voted no.
What happened? Look, they don't want me to play this because it just cut off on its own. Ain't that something? Basically, he's saying the opposite of what happened. So just to give you a synopsis, the Democratic Party is fighting to maintain affordable health care, not to have our health care taken away. And the Republicans are saying, no, we want to increase the cost, which will make it more difficult. And think about it. If we open it up and say, fine, healthcare costs more now, a lot of people are going to drop their or going to be dropped because they can't afford to pay 3 times what they're already paying. Imagine, it's expensive right now for a lot of people. Okay, so they're not going to be able to afford to pay for the healthcare. So guess who has to pay the brunt of that? Because corporations are greedy. They still want to be able to make whatever they're making. We are going to pay even more and more. Even with this whole SNAP thing, when people were fearful of, not being able to buy food, these grocery stores, a majority of their food, their money comes from the federal government by way of SNAP. So if people didn't have access to SNAP, that stuff would just sit on the shelves and rot, and they got to get it off. So the price would have went up for those of us who can afford to buy food without subsidies. Would be paying more for it because people are greedy. They want to make money. So it wouldn't benefit anybody. I mean, unless you just filthy rich and you just don't care. You don't check the price. Shout out to what rapper was that? He's telling him check the price. Bad women is all that he liked. Anyway, people say ignorant stuff all the time. But the whole point is that it's a domino effect. So while people are saying, yeah, increase the cost of healthcare. Yeah, take away this. And yeah, people shouldn't have access to SNAP benefits. Well, guess who's going to pay for it? When people are going into the hospital without having health insurance, guess who's going to pay more on their premiums? Guess who they're gonna foot that bill to? They're gonna foot that bill to people who are insured, who are gonna pay more on their premiums because these corporations still need to make money. They still need to make money, and we have a president who is not. He says it with his full chest. We don't have to say it for him, but he says it straight up and straight down how he feels about people who did not vote for him and the Democratic Party. Mind you, the things that he's doing does not just affect the people who didn't vote for him or the Democrats or the independents. It actually affects those who did support him, and they're feeling it too. So for those people who voted for him or chose not to get in this fight and fight for us and themselves, I say, I hope you have the holiday, the life, the job, the income that you voted for or didn't vote for. Okay. But here, out of the very mouth of y'all's president saying what he was going to do, what he was going to do, being in the position to do so with subsidies and all of the programs that are in effect. And think about this: you're going to close Social Security. I've been paying into Social Security. I've been working since I was 14, 15 years old. Where's my money going to go if you get rid of Social Security? Where you going to give me all that money back that I put into it? No, you're going to put it and allocate it to something else. That's exactly what's going to happen. So let me just play this clip of him saying it himself, his own mouth.
Shutdown is causing pain and suffering for hardworking Americans, including our military, our air traffic controllers, and impoverished mothers, people with young children, people that have to live not the greatest of lives, but we're doing so many tax cuts. We've cut their taxes, the great big beautiful bill. We've cut their taxes at levels that nobody's ever seen. I mean, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. It's been a great thing for a lot of people. They're doing great. Despite all of the damage that it's caused, the shutdown has been, pretty damaging. I mean, it's not yet because it's early, but it gets a little bit worse as it goes along. And we'll be making cuts that will be permanent. And we're only going to cut Democrat programs. I hate to tell you. I guess that makes sense. But we're only cutting Democrat programs. But we're going to start that. And we have Russell, who can talk to you about it if he wants to. But we'll be cutting some very popular Democrat programs that aren't popular with Republicans, frankly, because that's the way it works. They wanted to do this. So we'll give them a little taste of their own medicine. But Chuck Schumer proclaimed this morning that every day gets better for them. No, every day it's actually getting worse for them. And they're having a rebellion in the Democrat Party because they want to stop. And if you saw all of Schumer's, I watched last night like 10 different times over the years, he said, you can't shut down government, you can't shut down. And now he's the one that shut it down.
The lies. The government was shut down because Democrats refuse to vote to take away health care for the American people. Plain and simple. The Republicans won't vote to the degree that Republican Congress members went on with their business. They were not in DC trying to figure out something. They went in, ate steak, and do whatever they do with our tax dollars, and still were getting paid while people were trying to figure out how they were going to pay their rent while they were being furloughed or having to go to work without getting paid. They were on vacation doing them, still getting a check. How was that? Those are the kind of things we should be protesting about. And I don't mean just marching in the streets, but pulling up to them. You know what I'm saying? Those are the kind of things that we should be focused on. How you get to go eat steak and just do you at the Marriott. You're lucky if you find a spot next to your sister. Anyway, how you able to do that though? While people are literally worried about how they're going to feed their family, if they're going to be able to go back to work. Sure, I can't imagine going to work every day and not getting a check. I can't imagine it. Then you got people saying, well, you should save and you should be prepared for a rainy day. You don't know people's situations. You don't know. Focus on what you do know about your life and be grateful if you're not in that position to where you can survive this storm, that you're not in that position. Have some humility, have some compassion, have some empathy for people who aren't as lucky as you are. How about that? Focus on the right things instead of the wrong things. Focus on the rich, greedy people who are trying to take everything from us by way of our tax dollars. Focus on that. Okay, focus on that. And I'm so glad that this police officer was found guilty. If you guys haven't heard of that, Deputy Sean Grayson was convicted of killing Sonia Macy. If you don't remember that story, she was killed July 6th of last year after she called the police because she thought she was had somebody prowling around her home. They pulled up and were in her house. She let them in. I kind of vaguely remember the story where I think the police officer that ended up killing her, shooting her in the face and several other times in her body, um, by way of gunshots, um, told her to go turn off a pot of water. So she went, as the story is told, she went to get to grab the pot. And I don't know, she must have sensed something about him. She already knew what was going to happen because she said, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. And he said that he would fucking shoot her in the face. This is what he fucking told her. He told her to drop the pot. She apologized. After he told her that, she dropped the pot. Okay. She dropped the pot and then she apologized. And she went and ducked behind a counter, raised her hands, and briefly rose. And when she rose, mind you, the pot's gone. I need this for context. I need y'all to understand that the pot's gone. And he shot her 3 times. And again, one of those wounds was one that he promised to do to her, was a fatal wound to her head. Okay. And so initially they went in to charge him with first-degree murder, but the jury was given the option of considering second-degree murder, which can apply when a defendant faces a serious provocation, being provoked, okay, or believes their action is justified, even if they believe it's unreasonable. So he was not charged with first-degree murder. He was charged with second-degree murder. His sentencing will go in January 29th, and he could do 20 years or probation. There's a possibility he may not even have to serve jail time. Um, but yeah, and so they based it on the fact that he felt like he was being provoked. She dropped the pot. She dug down like she was following orders. We've heard the story before. She was following orders and she was fearful. Dug down and hid with her arms up. And when she raised up, no boiling water in her hand, she was killed. Yeah. And in other news, in Nevada, they found 315 pounds, or what would equate to bodies of ashes dumped in Searchlight, just in the desert, for people who were cremated. So I guess what happens with cremations is you get everything but the bones, and that residue goes and they discard it or whatever. And there's no real regulations on how to discard it, but nobody knows where it's coming from. Shout out to Paul Mortuary who decided to clean it up. I don't know who dumped it, but somebody dumped 315 bodies of ashes into the Searchlight Desert in Nevada, and I just think that is very crazy and weird. And yeah. And shout out to Jasmine Crockett, who is being again proactive when she has put in a bill that's called the No President Payout Act. So again, y'all's president is trying to use our tax dollars to cover his attorney fees. So she is trying to put a bill into effect that will prevent him from using the $230 million he's asking for lawyer fees to be paid by us. The same people he's trying to starve out, the same people who may or may not have voted for him, he's trying to take away access to subsidies and health care. These very same people, he wants to use our money to pay for his lawyer fees. Make it make sense, okay? Make it make sense. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, we have ships being blown up in international waters. In international waters, ships are being blown up. My nephew just joined me. He back there chilling. Oh, he chilling. So if you hear some little noise in the background, that's just him playing with his toys. Okay, so anyway, we have these ships being blown up. And thanks to Stephen Miller, who is Trump's right-hand man, who has co-signed on this, they have put him as a deputy chief of staff for policy and homeland security, okay, advisor. And he's been rolling with him since 2016. He called us out. Yeah. And so since then, there have been more than there. Recently, it was just the White House said the United States forces have bombed another alleged drug smuggling vessel in the Eastern Pacific Ocean, killing 4 men just days after confirming it had killed 14 people in 3 weeks. He just got evicted. Okay, he just got evicted. Okay. Anyways, this is my first time seeing my nephew since he's been born, so I'm all excited. He can't do any wrong right now. So, all right. But anyway, back to the story. Just days after confirming this, they had killed 14 people in the 3 strikes on the vessels in the area. So the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, these are people who have no qualification and no business being in these positions, said in a post on X, which we know as Twitter, late on Wednesday, that the Department of War, which if you guys don't know, was renamed by y'all's presidents under his administration, which used to be the Defense Department. So now it's called the Department of War. Man, y'all be focused on the wrong things. Y'all gotta pay attention. He telling you in your face. He telling you in your face while you worried about not voting. That's the least you can do. Like, wow, he telling you in his face what he's trying to do. Yeah. So yeah, this is Pete Hegseth is the he is a U.S. Secretary of the Department of War. Why would they change it to the Department of War and not the Defense Secretary? I'm gonna let y'all marinate on that. So he said they carried out a lethal kinetic strike on yet another narco trafficking vessel. Since September 2nd, the U.S. military has carried out at least 14 strikes targeting about 15 vessels in the Caribbean Sea and the Eastern Pacific. At least 61 people have now been convicted of confirmed killed. Okay, confirmed killed, not convicted, by the 2-month-long campaign, which has also seen the U.S. bolster its military presence in the Caribbean to unusually high levels. The White House has yet to provide any evidence to the public for any of these strikes to substantiate its allegations of drug trafficking, by way of the fact that some people have survived. Some of the people who actually survived being bombed, and I think they used drones to bomb these so-called drug terrorists, were set free. They were set free. They were allowed to go. So luckily they survived. But how many other people who were innocent and they're dead? The Trump administration has framed the strikes as a national security measure, claiming that the alleged drug traffickers are unlawful combatants in a non-international armed conflict, but it has refused to go to Congress to seek approval for its actions. So we no longer have checks and balances under this president. And he said he wanted to be dictator for a day. And people let that go over their head, because you don't understand that if you're dictator for a day, you're dictator for life until you're overthrown and sent about your merry way, hopefully to hell. Yeah. Critics have called the strikes a form of extrajudicial killing and violation of international law. So this man is, I mean, forget he got 34 felonies and all the other violations he's done. He's actually violating international law and should be brought to world court. You know, these laws prohibit countries from using lethal military force against non-combatants outside of a conflict zone. This is not a conflict zone, okay? This is violation of international law. And if they can do that to people who are not even citizens, who are not even in their territory, this is not even in their territory, how do you feel you're safe? And why are you caping for these people and finding excuses and reasons not to vote and not to support them? Why are you still worried about the vice president, the former vice president being black? And why are you so concerned about things that don't matter and not focus on these things? Because if he can get away with this, and as you see with ICE, everybody getting hammed up now if you got brown skin. You know what I'm saying? It's a lie. Remember, slavery was legal before. It was legal to enslave people here in the United States. Discrimination was legal in the United States. Legal, okay? Marital abuse and marital rape was legal in the United States. Before people changed it, the people had to get involved. We are the people. Okay, we are the people, and sometimes we're not able to change laws, so we create other laws. So I bring this example up, because we have people that you can be convicted of manslaughter, murder, whatever the situation may be, and that may not be enough, because sentencing by states may not what you consider enough. Maybe 10 years you don't think a person should get, because we see with this police officer, he may get a lesser time because it went from being first-degree murder to second-degree murder. So he may not even do time. He may even get probation. So even if we're not able to hold people accountable with the laws that are in effect, adding amendments to laws, adding a lynching law, for example. So yeah, this man was convicted of killing a man, right, by way of lynching, but they consider in a jury, judge considered that manslaughter, and this man's only going to do 5 years, if that. But we pad on another law where you lynched him, and lynching is illegal because people went out and fought for the right for people to have protections against lynchers. So now you have a lynching law that says you have to do minimum 30 years if you lynch somebody. And so, yeah, you got this manslaughter charge, and it says you get to walk free under probation for 10, 15 years. But this lynching law says, nah, son, you got 30 years. You got 30 years that you got to do because you lynched somebody. So that's why we have to have certain protections and backups on top of that, because we see, if you played the game of Monopoly or just read how this, just going over some of the things I said, they make the rules to get themselves out of trouble. Like they make laws, but they also make it so that they can get themselves out of trouble. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene under this closed, the house being closed. She's saying, hey, we can enforce a nuclear law. And a nuclear law says we can override all of this. So basically, you need a 60 vote to be able to pass this bill where they're trying to take away health care for the American people. And the Democrats that says, no, we ain't going to be able to do it. And she said, okay, F them. We'll just impose the nuclear law. So they always got something in the bag. Why they haven't used it yet, I don't know. Because if they impose that nuclear law, yes, the House would be open because they got the bill passed in the Senate, but it will still be havoc because people are going to be struggling, not having the subsidies that they need to be able to live, to be alive. Okay. Shout out to all of the hurricane survivors and those who lost their lives in Jamaica. It was Hurricane Melissa. Y'all know this is hurricane season for those of you who like to travel during this time of year. But yeah, Jamaica got hit hard all over the country. 19 people have died in Jamaica. In Haiti, it's 50. 50 people have lost their lives. And in Cuba, you hardly see any coverage because we know the embargoes and things of that nature. But I was able to read in Al Jazeera's newspaper that more than 3 million people were exposed to life-threatening conditions during the hurricane in Cuba, and 735,000 people were safely evacuated. There have been no reports of deaths. Cuba, they listen, and they're poor. They're considered poor. There's a socialistic economy. Doctors make the same amount as a waitress, as a store worker, as a cashier. Food is rationed out. No matter what your pace, no matter what your occupation or your education is, everybody gets the equivalent amount of food based on their household. But 240 communities have been cut off due to flooding and landslides in the Cuban area, but no deaths reported, but that's good news. And Elon Musk is building a robot military. Yeah, okay. Those are the things that I wanted to share with you. I just want to make sure I didn't leave any clips behind. I had a whole lot of clips. I'm out here turning out for my brother's birthday, his 40th birthday with my family, and I just want to enjoy that. But I didn't want to miss this opportunity to spend some time with you all. I hope that you learned something here, and I hope that you guys will continue to focus on things that matter and not be distracted by the things that they want you to be distracted by, because that is their intention, to get you talking about things that does not affect your digestive system, that does not cause you to lose sleep at night, but causes you to have wasteful conversations about things that literally that just don't matter. Okay, so I love you guys. I respect you, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And I believe I will be back next week. Let me go ahead and give my applause for those who joined me in the chat to thank you as well. And yes, I'm petty. So I'll say again, for those of you who, I hope that you have the holiday and the pay and all of those things that you voted for. I hope that you have the day that you voted for. All right. Till next Saturday, 2 p.m. West Coast time, same spot, different background. Talk to you later, y'all.